Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Advanced Football X's and O's. So today we're going to talk about a very common topic, a very popular topic right now. It's kind of the hot topic, and that is RPOs, which is run pass options. And the reason why it's so big right now is because some big time college teams started adopting it, getting very big results out of it, and it started leaking into the NFL. And very popularly, there's like the story of the Super Bowl, in my opinion, was how both teams were introducing RPOs, especially the Eagles, to really help Nick Foles out and to just really get some easy yards and really just destroy the Patriots out of it. So now we're going to try and explore what is the concept of an RPO. So to me, it all originates from a numbers game. It originates from how can we exploit a defense just based on numbers, based on alignment. And we talked about this before, and we talked about it with kind of like box numbers, where if a team is in cover 2 with 2 deep safeties or some type of 2 deep shell, theoretically we have the numbers in the box. In this example right here, they have 4 defensive linemen and 1 linebacker in the box. We have 5 offensive linemen. If we block this appropriately, or in theory if we block this appropriately, we can get 5 offensive linemen on 5 defenders. Our running back comes free, and at least we get him through the box untouched. That is just the most basic level of abusing numbers that we can get, and that the defense's response to this would be to move one of these safeties down, and then, since they have 6 defenders in the box to our 5 offensive linemen, we should be saying, okay, now we have the advantage to throw the ball. That is just a back and forth that's very common of just 2 deep versus 1 deep. What is the defense in? We're passing it if they're running 1 deep, or we're running it if they're in 2 deep. That's just a very, very, very old school common way of abusing numbers. But then RPOs does this instead of doing it in a vertical fashion of is it a safety deep or in the box? They do it laterally a lot of the times. So what we're going to talk about first is that we're going to talk about one of the 2 styles of RPOs. I kind of break them into 2 different ones, and that's exploiting numbers or reading a player. So what we're going to talk about first is exploiting numbers. So if we pull up a cover 2 here, what we really get is that if we were to run some type of run here, it doesn't matter necessarily to us what it is. It could be an inside zone, it could be power. What we're really saying is that since we believe we have numbers here, once again, we have 4 defensive linemen here, if we believe we have numbers, the defense is going to have to cheat in some way. One of these defenders is going to have to cheat here. Whether it's probably going to be one of these 2 slot defenders, they're going to start cheating towards the run right when we start showing it. Right when these offensive linemen come off of the line and they start pushing really hard and aggressively, instantly we're going to get some of these slot defenders to start attacking the run just to help out, just because we're going to be defeating them there. So what we end up doing with our receivers, instead of telling them merely just to kind of set up and try and seal one of these defenders or just block them, they found really the more effective way of doing this is just saying, okay, what we'll do is we'll run a screen out here. We'll just run like a bubble in a screen, and that if this slot defender cheats, we're just going to throw the bubble because he's going to run himself out of the run. We get an easy block on the outside here, we bubble around it, and we just get a ton of yards on the sideline. And this is kind of what we're talking about. We're just abusing numbers here. If they cheat one of these slot defenders, either pre-snap or post-snap, here we would probably be looking for it pre-snap, in my opinion, to see, okay, where does the overhang defend? Where is the overhang defender? And that's a pretty big concept. Most of the time when you're talking about an overhang defender, you're more talking about a linebacker in the box. Like, say that they had, instead of him being here, he was more like cheated towards the box to help stop the run, and they did not bring out a defender and align him out here on the slot. That is a very clear pre-snap situation where if we were in a RPO, or maybe even if we weren't in an RPO, we would be audibling to some type of bubble screen and taking advantage of it. With an RPO, you do away with the audibles. It's built into the run. The pass side of it is already built in. And the awesome thing about it is that we could do this to both sides. It's just built in that our quarterback knows either pre-snap or post-snap. Here we would often be doing this pre-snap. When we do this run action, I know I have an option to throw it out onto one of these bubble screens. We're really just reading one of these 2 overhang defenders. Once again, to me, it often has to do with numbers. Do they have the numbers in the box? Yes. Then we're probably throwing one of these outside concepts. If they don't have the numbers in the box, we're just going to hand it and run it, and we're just going to try and pick up a chunk of yards. That is abusing numbers with RPOs. and this has to be done from spread formations, I guess I would say. When you're abusing numbers, if instead we didn't have like slot receivers here and we just had tight ends like right on the edge, we couldn't really abuse the numbers here. It would, or at least it would be a lot harder to abuse the numbers. In theory, I guess we could talk about, if we had two tight ends here, that we could just do some type of like quick outs right there, and we could read that if the overhang defenders were too far inside, like say like here, if we did an out route here and this backside started chasing the run hard enough, we could RPO it back to the backside. But I don't really think anyone really does that out of a tight formation. You would much more probably try and read the seams more than you would do an out route there. But if we're abusing the numbers side of it and we're doing pre-snap reads, I believe it has to be done from spread teams, from spread formations. I think it would be very difficult from tight formations and heavier personnel. Then that's the reading side. If we go to a post-snap side, here if we look at like a cover 3, we know that if we ran just a simple, like, I don't know, pull concept, if we cleared out the corner to the outside, what we could do is we could, during the run right here, if we ran the ball, that we could read this defender right here. Our quarterback could read him and clearly say, okay, on this out route, I know that if he hesitates or takes one step inside while I'm meshing on this run, I can throw that out route instantly. I know the corner's clearing out. That's if they're in a one deep shell. We can pretty certainly have that read. And also on top of that, we can do some other things. Like we could do a stick concept if we wanted to, and we could read that to see if he jumps inside. We could throw kind of a stick. So there's a bunch of different concepts here, but the key difference is that here we would often be doing this post snap. This would be clearly on this mesh, our quarterback is staring down one of these overhang defenders and saying, okay, are you stepping towards the run? Are you hesitating? No, then we're going to throw a stick. We're going to throw an out. It really depends on the shell that you see based on which route combinations you wanted to do. Cover 3, I would say, is much easier to abuse kind of the flat type of rotations, since we know we can clear out the corner. We can do sticks. We can do outs. We can do a lot of things there. A little harder versus cover 2, but honestly against cover 2, we're just going to be trying to drill them on the inside like we had here. Since we have the numbers advantage, we really just want to drill them with the run, and that's when pre-snap, when they start cheating, that's when we start running our bubbles, in my opinion. That's when we start running our screens, our stuff to the outside. But that's really RPOs, is that we're just trying to abuse the numbers in the box, or at least I believe that's where the origin of this came from. We realized, hey, we're not just able to abuse the numbers like short and deep with the box, we're able to abuse it inside outside. We're able to abuse these overhang defenders. One thing I would say is, I think since RPOs are getting more and more popular, that everything is an RPO all of a sudden. Whenever there's a play action pass, an announcer's saying, oh, they RPO'd it. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think while some teams are starting to integrate, maybe most of their runs, 75% of their runs are turning into RPOs, maybe even more than that. It's possible, but I don't think this I don't believe this replaces play action passes. I don't believe this fully replaces all of your runs, or at least personally, I don't think so. I guess it is possible. I still think these things have to be done in moderation. There's some downsides to it. If we look at kind of the upsides, we can potentially get more out of our running plays and our quick game, because if we mesh the two of them together, and instead of saying, okay, we're going to run 20 runs this game and we're going to try and get maybe like 15 quick passes in, instead we can say, okay, we're going to guarantee maybe 10 runs and 7 quick passes, and then we're going to take the other 50% of them and we're just going to do RPOs, and based on the defense, we'll let them dictate kind of where the extra goes. I believe that's probably the more common way of doing it, but with having them mixed, potentially we do get more value out of them. We do screw with the defense a little more. We are getting kind of like a much more direct... It's hard to say. Like, they much more directly build off of each other when it's built into an RPO. When we just have a run and then we have a pass that we know vaguely work off of each other and we're more calling them separate, it's kind of a little harder to try and game the defense with them. But when they're built in and the quarterback's not doing audibles and it's much more clear, here's a simple one-man read or here's a pre-snap read to choose between the two of them, I believe they're much, much easier to integrate into each other to get value out of both of them in that way. And like I said, there's no audible. With an RPO, before, if they stacked the box, your quarterback would have to audible out. The defense is clearly seeing the quarterback audible. And if you've ever seen, like, there's some funny ones with, like, Sean Lee of the Cowboys. The quarterback's audibling, Sean Lee is instantly audibling too, and it's just matching because it's pretty clear, oh, we're stacking the box and suddenly they're audibling. It's pretty obvious what they're going to be audibling to. If it was just an RPO called and the defense came in and stacked the box, they could just straight up hike it instantly because they know they already have the reads built into that running play. They don't need to audible out of it and show the defense that they are doing so. I would say another good thing about it is that kind of like how announcers screw up, oh, that's an RPO when really it was just like a play action pass. The defense kind of gets screwed by that too. Everything kind of starts looking the same. I think I was watching a video kind of in a little bit of research before this, and the person put it really well for the Patriots-Eagles in the Super Bowl, and that with the Eagles, their runs and their RPOs, their play action passes, everything started just looking the same. And that's pretty powerful, that if it's kind of hard to just, while watching it, to determine whether that's a straight up run, whether it's an RPO, whether it's a play action pass, that screws with the defense. And that's where, as a defender, when it starts screwing with you, when you start misstepping and they're reading you, they're taking advantage of you, your mind is everywhere at that point. Like, you really need to settle down. You really need to have a clear game plan as a defense. And I think that's a pretty powerful part of it, is that the confusion, and if you can make everything look the same when they're not the same, that always has value. That deception, that they can't instantly react. They're stopping, they're thinking a little bit, they're concerned, they're afraid of getting read, they get afraid of attacking the run because what if I'm getting read by the outside? But then when it's just a straight up handoff, then they're kind of hesitant and they're that much slower to the box. There's a lot of cool stuff with that. Some of the cons is that obviously this takes extra practice time. Just very clearly, when you're mixing in more reads, there's more things to go wrong. There's more moving pieces. That's always going to require more practice time to get right. If you're doing post-snap reads, I believe that always has a danger in that if your quarterback makes the wrong post-snap read, things can go very wrong. I believe teams will be more turnover prone when they're running RPOs. Now, the more value that they get out of their runs, the more yards per play that they might generate, probably will make up for the small increase in the interceptions or fumbles, whatever it might be. But it is worth noting that I believe that risk always goes up when you start introducing more moving parts like this. I believe it's also possible to get in your own head as an offense. When you start making everything kind of feel the same and look the same, I think it's kind of hard as a play caller sometimes that maybe you get in your own head. When you start calling RPOs and they stop working, I feel like you might hit a wall and you're like, whoa, where do we go from here? If they're stopping the RPO, do we just go to our quick game? Do we go to our running game? Do we just keep doing RPOs? I feel like you can get in a really weird funk of, if they stop the RPOs, do you feel confident enough to just go straight back to your quick game and not have the RPO portion of it? I feel like it's a weird thing that I think offenses might start like overthinking this and start getting in their own heads, especially when they start facing better defenses. I think if you start shutting down the RPO, I feel like a lot of these teams that are too reliant on it, I really think there could be something there where they might just instantly shut down. They might grind to a halt as an offense. I think that's one thing that I don't really like about teams who do constant hurry-ups like Oregon. Once Oregon started facing good defenses and they weren't getting their first downs and sometimes they're just 3-and-outing and they're not able to get into that like super fast mode, I feel like suddenly they're in a rut. They feel like they're not at their normal speed. They're not taking advantage of their normal things. If you take the RPO out of some of these RPO teams, I feel like mentally it starts to do the same thing where they start grinding to a halt. Things start getting really awkward for them. They don't know how to like change the pace and switch to another gear. I believe there's something to that. We can't be too reliant on RPOs. I think it needs to be mixed in and not completely take over. Also, runs are slow to develop. Whenever you're reading, whenever you're meshing, you're always going to have some type of delay there. You're not instantly getting that running back full speed up the hole. There is something to not doing RPOs in every single play. You need to sometimes just be able to hand it to your quarterback, have the confidence, have your offensive line knowing this is definitely going to be a run, and that you just smash mouth it and get it up. And I think the other part of that is that since there is a run concept to this, your offensive linemen cannot get downfield, or they shouldn't be getting downfield. That is an illegal man downfield. If you end up throwing the ball and your offensive lineman's chasing a linebacker second level, that is a penalty. So a lot of teams, they end up their offensive linemen just can only block at the gap and kind of just move some bodies for the running back. They're not able to actually climb and combo and get some like second level defenders in an RPO just because you have that pass element to it. That offensive lineman doesn't know if it's a pass or a run. He has to block it kind of as if it's a pass while still blocking for the run. There's some awkward interaction there. But overall, we've seen in the Super Bowl, this is an insanely powerful concept. It just requires the defense to keep thinking. You put defenders in weird binds. I also think there's something to like pattern matching defenses. If the offense fully understands your RPO, they watch enough tape, they're familiar enough with it, they can force your reactions. If they know what your reads are and when you decide to hand it, when you decide to throw it, they can start coming up with some specific plans to try and fool you into doing one or forcing you to do one because they know that's your read and then shutting it down. So like pattern matching zones on defense, it's kind of the same way. If the offense is clearly understanding what you're doing, they're just going to be that much better off and you're not going to catch them off guard with it. But really powerful tool. We're going to be seeing this a ton. I think mainly we see this from spread teams. I guess we would draw one more thing up. I would say that the Eagles started doing this a lot from like heavy sets. Like they'd had like extra tight ends on the line of scrimmage. And what they'd end up doing is they would get a quick seam route from one of the tight ends who wouldn't block, and they would literally just read like one of the linebackers. It was actually pretty cool because it's hard to tell when that's an RPO, when it's a run, and when it's a play action pass. Suddenly your safety's guessing, if he does this on every run and does this seam route, your safety is just clueless as to whether that's an RPO, that's a run, that it's a play action pass. He starts hesitating. If you get the linebacker a few times biting on it and you throw it behind him, he starts hesitating. And I think that's where the real power comes from, is if the defense kind of just gets behind on this and you really beat one of those players a few times, he's going to hesitate. He's going to hesitate. He's going to hesitate. He's going to feel like he's always making the wrong reads because that's really what you're trying to do. If he steps backwards, we're running it. If he steps forward, we're throwing it. That's really the essence. We are either reading players post-snap or doing it pre-snap with numbers. I believe the number side of it is more common. The post-snap of it, a little more dangerous, but definitely I think more professional teams are doing the more post-snap stuff. But that's RPOs, guys. I'm really curious to see where it goes, where it stops. It's kind of the new thing. Like zone reads were kind of the new thing for the last few years. I think RPOs are taking over that because instead of putting your quarterback at danger to run the ball, which is really what zone reads often were, now we're instead just throwing the ball and keeping them safe. Awesome. It's different. Not quite the same thing, but it's pretty cool. Please leave any comments if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in the next video.